Hi everyone, I'm Amy Miller and I am hopping on live today to talk about team building. Kind of ironic that I would be talking about team building because I'm one of those people where in the past, whenever the idea or an activity having to do with team building was mentioned, sometimes, if I'm being honest, my heart would kind of sink into my stomach a little bit and I would become demotivated. And a lot of times this can happen. Team building exercises can end up not producing long-lasting effects, and they can demotivate some members of your team. And why might that be? Because we have different personalities, and so likely as a leader, you're going to have varied personalities across your team, and then of course across your organization. And so how can you design a team building exercise that can be effective and motivating for all of your team members and also create lasting effects into the future? And research shows that team building has increased, or team building exercises have increased 50% over the last decade. And the same research shows that some team building exercises are not useful and demotivate employees, and people can feel like they're a waste of time. But then of course there's also research that shows that team building exercises, when properly implemented and when designed in a way that they are working toward the overarching goal of the team and directly related to the role itself, then team building exercises can have a positive effect. So we're going to dive in and talk about it, and I'll share a specific example of how you can of an exercise that you can do to that you can implement to motivate your team. And then I'm excited to share this exercise. I have talked about it before, and I thought about it a while back, but then, and I actually wrote about it in one of my books, Ready, Set, Recruit, The Hiring Manager's Guide to Recruiting with Confidence. But then I also read about it in my research, and I was excited to learn that there's actually a name for this technique. So we're going to dive in and talk about that. But first, let's talk about job motivation. And research shows that two main drivers to increase job motivation. One is competency, and then the other is resources. I'm sure you likely as a manager have heard your team maybe complain, at least at some point, that they don't have enough resources. And your job as a manager oftentimes is to remove those roadblocks and provide resources for your team. But first, let's look at the job motivation or job motivator of competency. We want to feel like we are capable, like we are competent, like we are able to do the job, to get the work done, to achieve a goal. Because how likely are we to be motivated and work hard toward a goal if it's something that we don't feel like we have the capabilities to do and to achieve? Similarly, is the resources. If we feel like we don't have adequate resources to get our job done, how likely are we to try hard at our job? We might just give up on that element or aspect of our job, or we may just not try very hard. But what if you do have the resources across your team and within your organization, yet your employee doesn't know who or who to go to for that resource or where to find it? Then that is pretty much the same as not having the resource at all. And you've likely heard before, if you don't have the answer, but you know who to go to, where to get the answer, this is just as good as having the answer. And so what about creating a team building exercise that is designed to let your team, to inform your team on who to go to and where to get resources, and to also, so that's one, and then one aspect of the exercise that we'll talk about, but then also to help your team both as an individual feel motivated and have a more confident and have a better appreciation for their own skills and strengths, but also a better understanding of the skills and strengths of their team members. This can help to create and foster more collaboration within your team. And then even after the team building exercise, they know who to go to for a resource, and so then you have that ongoing collaboration. Okay, so the exercise is, or the term is that I want to talk about for team building is actually called transactive memory systems, or knowledge management systems. And this is just a way to inform your team and or the people across your organization of who does what. So again, if you don't have the answer or the knowledge yourself, because we're not all going to be experts in all areas. This is why we have teams. But you know who to go to for that information, then you're likely to feel more motivated because the resource is there. So this is coming back to job motivators, feeling competent and capable, and feeling resourceful. And so what is one way, one exercise, for example, that you can implement for a team building exercise by using knowledge management systems and or transactive memory systems? Let's say I talk about sales teams as an example often because this is my personal experience, but the same exercise can be relatable and across many different, if not all, industries, and I'll share some examples of that as well. But let's say that you are leading a sales team. You're likely going to notice that some members of your sales team are very strong. For example, if it's medical sales, this is my background as well before I transitioned to recruiting primarily for the medical manufacturing industry. So I'll use this example because it's easy. But let's say somebody on your team is likely very strong in understanding and interpreting and speaking about clinical data, where they can read, easily understand the information, and then relay it in a way that's easy to share with others and for others to understand. So somebody on your team is strong in clinical, technical information. And then maybe somebody else on your team is not super strong in the clinical, technical piece, like reading the white papers and understanding and interpreting the studies, but they're very strong in maybe customer service and highly self-motivated, and so they get out there and they do what they need to do every day. They go the extra mile, and they're just high in self-motivation. And then maybe you have somebody else on your team that is really strong in prospecting, so they've always got their pipeline full for where to go, who to go to, where to go after that next business. And then likely other members of your team, you're going to have some that are not strong in filling their pipeline in prospecting. You're going to have some that are maybe not so strong clinically in understanding the technical clinical data. And then you may have some team members that have a more challenging time motivating themselves each day. And if you are leading a sales team, while you have that overarching goal, the organization wants their sales reps to hit their numbers. You want, as the manager, your team to hit their numbers. So everybody has the same overarching goal, but you have your individual quotas. So sometimes it can feel maybe a bit lonely, or just like you're on your own in the field every day, and you might need some extra motivation. So my idea, and I'm sure there are leaders out there already doing this, but would be to, instead of, so for your next team building exercise, instead of taking your team to happy hour or bowling or maybe an obstacle course where there's tug of war and team building sort of exercises that don't necessarily relate to the job and don't necessarily help drive and foster that team collaboration once the event is over, what about if you instead create an exercise using transactive memory systems where your team members have an opportunity to stand up and educate and share what they do well and how they do it. And so, for example, your team member who's really strong in prospecting, they can, and of course, prep your team before and say, hey, for the next meeting, here's what we're going to do. You're going to stand up and speak for 5 to 10 minutes. You can just get up and talk. If you want to do a slide deck presentation, you can, but you don't have to. That's, of course, up to you, however you want to do that. But you're going to stand up and have an opportunity to share what you do well. And you could, of course, talk with your team member and let them know, this is what I've observed you're really strong in, and so I would love for you to stand up and share with the team so that they can learn from you, and you can see if they agree, or maybe they have a different idea of a strength that they would like to focus on, and this way they are empowered and they have some input in what they share, and of course in how they share it. But this way, so you can have each team member stand up and talk about their strength and not just what they do, but how they do it, so that the other members of the team can learn. And maybe they can gather some takeaways from that member of their team, and or the next time they're running up against a challenge, let's say you have the highly motivated, self-motivated person get up and talk about how they stay motivated and what drives their motivation and little tricks that they do to lift themselves up up when they're feeling unmotivated. Well, then maybe one day when one of your team members is in the field struggling a little bit with motivation, they can say, hey, oh, I remember Amy talked about she's super self-motivated. Let me give her a call. Maybe she'll have some words of wisdom for me, or maybe just talking with her will help energize me a bit. So that would be true for me. I'm highly self-motivated, but back when I was in medical sales, I struggled with a couple things. I was not very good at prospecting. I mean, I would go do it. No, I was okay at prospecting, but as far as keeping my pipeline full, that was definitely and still is an area that I could improve upon, because I tend to stay just laser focused on what I'm working on right now. But if I know who on the team is particularly strong in prospecting and keeping their pipeline full, then I can reach out to them and I can get some ideas from them. Or maybe I can grab a coffee or lunch with them, or maybe I can even see if they'll let me tag along and do a half day in the field with that person. So I love this idea of, for your team building exercise, instead of doing something fun like taking the team to dinner, that can be fun as well, but implementing an exercise where your team members get to share their strengths. And in this way, you can create an opportunity for your team to better, moving forward, leverage what I like to call leverage their strengths and weaknesses. We're not all going to be strong at everything, and that is okay. This is one of the beautiful things about teamwork or building a team, because you're going to have different, you're going to have a greater whole with the sum of the parts of the team working together, because everybody is bringing different strengths to the team. And also, after this exercise and having a better understanding of one another, your team is likely going to have more respect for each other, because they're going to see, oh, so-and-so is good at this, but then they're also going to have more confidence in themselves because they were able to get up and talk about how they bring value to the team. And so then you've got this unity and elevated individual self-confidence as well. And then when you know where to go to get that resource, even if it's not something that you possess yourself, then it's as good as you're as good as having that knowledge already, because you know where to go. So that would be an example of implementing transactive memory systems and or knowledge management systems within your team. But what about across your organization? Something that I see a lot, so I'm a recruiter, you likely know if you watch my videos, and so I'm I'm an external recruiter, so from the outside looking in, one thing that I often see is a disconnect between and not disconnect is maybe a strong word, but I see communication challenges oftentimes between HR and the internal recruiting team, for example, and the sales and sales leadership teams. And I think part of this could be because the teams don't necessarily have a strong understanding of the other team's drivers. Now, we know what HR does generally, and we know that the sales teams are out there driving sales, so we understand that, but we don't necessarily know enough to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. And when we better understand each other, this creates a closer connection. And then when we feel like we understand one another and we feel more closely connected, we are going to work harder for the other person, and or we're just going to have a better understanding of what maybe their challenges are, and we can have with that a greater compassion for that person or that team, and then we might be more open to reach out to them and collaborate a little bit more. So you could also, in addition to the smaller meetings within the smaller teams, if maybe for a national meeting where multiple teams within the organization are present, you could do the same sort of thing where you've got a couple representatives from the sales team, for example, and a couple representatives from HR, for example, and these are you also have marketing, you've got research and development, but having different representatives from the different cross-functional teams within an organization stand up and talk about what they do and what they do well, and maybe some of their day-to-day challenges and maybe some of their goals that they are working toward. This way, the other members of the other teams can learn about each other, and then you're again fostering more of that collaboration. They may be more likely to reach out to one another if they because they know who to go to for a certain resource. And again, of course, the organization is going to have the big overarching goal, which each team member and each type of team is all working toward. But if we don't understand the challenges and the goals and the drivers, and the goals being also the metrics, for example, that team is working toward, we're likely going to have less compassion for those team members. And so you can also use the same type of exercise in cross-functionally across the organization to help motivate the team, and to help increase resources, and to help each other, the different team members, better leverage their strengths and weaknesses. And in this way, you are raising or creating a stronger team efficacy, where the team members can see that they're working toward a common goal, versus just instead having a happy hour or an after conference party, which that can all be great and fun too. But keep in mind, with your highly conscientious and maybe introverted personality types, I'll use this as an example because this is me. While I'm outgoing and social, and I do like talking to people, I've struggled in the past at different organizations when I was in a sales role and part of a team where we were forced or strongly encouraged to come together to do these activities that really didn't drive the business. And so I felt stressed because I had my individual sales goals and quota that I was working toward, and maybe clients that needed me, but I'm being pulled away from that task to focus on this team building exercise, which isn't really doing anything. And I have a couple of funny stories. Let me think. I'm thinking out loud whether I want to share. I guess I will. One of my medical sales jobs, so if you're in medical sales, you're familiar, you have the national conferences where you go annually, and you have your talks, and different people get up from the company, and you've got awards, and then you likely have some team building exercises. So one of these team building exercises, each team had to put together a bicycle, and I did not want to participate in this activity at all. I'm not good at putting things together, and I don't need to be for my job. I'll get a friend or I'll pay somebody to do that. This is not something I'm ever going to be good at, and I'm okay with that. And so I'm the type of person where I can't force myself to do something if I don't want to do it. So I will hit a wall, and I just can't make myself. And as a result, I did not participate in putting this bike together. And so what the activity was, we had all of the parts of the bike, and then we had a toolbox, and then there were multiple teams because it was a national conference. But you didn't have all of the tools that you needed within your toolbox, so then you had to go work with other teams and say, hey, we need a wrench. Do you have a wrench? And I was just thinking, this is so stupid. This is not helping me learn more about my team or do my job better. So anyhow, you're going to have people like that on your team. And so these kinds of exercises can demotivate them. And then you're going to have people that are having fun with it. And again, how do we please everyone? I gave those examples, so now I'm sharing a funny story about myself and when I was not very team oriented. So as a result, I did not help in putting this bike together at all. And I think most of my team was not super motivated to do this. And so what happened was we did not do a good job of putting our bike together. And probably it wasn't really rideable. But then towards the end of our exercise, they let us know that a bunch of little kids were going to be coming into the room to get their bikes, and we were giving them these bikes. And so then my team was thinking, oh my goodness, we've got to get it together. And thankfully the guys on the team, because we had both men and women on the team, the guys got together and they fixed it, and they put together a bike so that we could have a good bike to give to the little kid that got our bike. So thankfully we had people on our team that were competent and capable of putting this bike together, but the exercise did not seem to motivate anybody on my particular team. I don't know about the other folks. And the last funny part of this story, it's funny to me looking back now was that, so during the conference or meeting was a few days long, probably 3 nights, and they did have videographers going around the entire meeting and videotaping, because of course they were going to put together a fun video to show at the last day of the meeting. And when that moment came, again, my heart went into my stomach, because I was thinking, oh no, I probably did not look very happy. I don't have a poker face during these team exercises. And so I was anxiously awaiting the screenshot of my unhappy face when they showed the video. And what happened? I was not in the video at all. So they edited me out because I didn't look very happy. And that's because, it's not because I'm not a happy person. I'm sure you can tell that I am. And even back then I was still generally happy, not as happy as I am today. But I don't like team building exercises. But the transactive memory systems, this activity I like. And if I were back on a team now, then that is exactly what I would do. Even if it were not an organized exercise, I would get to know members of my team, and I would learn who is strong in what, so that I knew who to go to when I needed help in what area. And this is, I think, a great way to help motivate your team, to help inform them of who and where their resources are, and to help them also develop a greater appreciation and confidence within themselves, and a greater respect for one another. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you so much for watching. If you have a question or a comment, I love to see your questions and your comments, and I will hop on and reply if I missed you during the live. And if you got some value from the video, I invite you to like and subscribe. That will help me grow the channel. It will help you stay updated on my next video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.